Hey folks, this is Chandran here, and I'm joined once again by my good friend Angry Ogre
I'm happy to be here.
for our set review of Bloomburrow. Today we're going to do the color blue, and we're just gonna jump straight into it. Here we go, let's jump into the blue. The first card we're gonna be looking at is Into the Floodmore for blue as casting cost. It's an instant, and you can gift a tapped fish. Return target creature and opponent control to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to its owner's hand. How do you like this one on summoning card?
I'm not that impressed, to be honest, Chandler. This seems just to me as basically a worse unsummon. You can't target your own stuff, and the clause where you can gift a fish to broaden your options and get to pick something that's not a creature. It's just not that valuable. How often will that come up? So I see it. I have it as a D plus, maybe a C minus.
Yeah, I'm at C minus. I agree with what you're saying. It's a worse unsummon. Unsummon can be kind of sweet to have some sort of very, very cheap, at least, interaction. And I do see this as being maybe playable if you need to hit threshold, or you need some defensive tempo in your blue-black deck or something in that effect, or maybe even in a red-blue spells deck, but at most it's going to be a C minus. And that's just not something I'm out looking for, I must admit. So
Yeah.
the next card, Shore Up, blue casting cost. Instant, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Untap it. Is this more what you're after?
It's a little bit better, I think, because this will at least a one-mana trick that saves your guy from removal spell is quite decent. But the +1/+1, I mean, we've seen this one in green where it's a counter and hexproof, which is just so much better. The untap ability, obviously, it doesn't hurt the card, but I would be very careful about ambushing too many people with that untap clause. You have to remember your guy is not that much bigger, so you open yourself up for counter pumping if your opponent has mana open. Still, I think it's better than Into the Floodmore because it's more reliable. You can use it to save your own dude, but I'm still in C minus territory.
I think in specifically like a spells auto deck, you might be bumping this up to just a card that you're okay playing, a C. But yeah, outside of that, it's not impressive enough. You can still keep in mind threshold is a thing. It's not really how I want to get there. I do think you're going to be putting one of these in a lot of your blue decks, though. The hexproof savior thing is fine. And I do guess that maybe with Provis, the untap effect and ambush could be a real thing once in a while. But yeah, be careful, be careful.
Yeah, but I guess it's you're right. It's a nice card to have a one-off, especially because being able to protect your dude for one does make it stronger. But still, not an amazing card.
Definitely not. No. Splash Portal is our next one. Once again, blue is the casting cost. It's a sorcery this time. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. If that creature is a bird, frog, otter, or rat, draw a card. So these are all the blue creature types, basically.
Yeah. This just seems way too clunky to me. It's jumping through way too many hoops in order to just get a battlefield, enter the battlefield trigger, and quite possibly also a card. And also this being sorcery speed means that you can't hardly even use it for that much more. So I'm pretty low on this one. I'm actually at a D plus.
I am a lot higher than you on this one then. I think this is gonna be actively great in like the frogs deck, or maybe even if you're playing like an otter deck with some frogs in there, or anything with a strong enter the battlefield effect, which has one of these subtypes, and a lot of your decks are gonna be with those. This is gonna draw your card, so it's gonna replace itself for 1 mana. It's gonna land in your in your graveyard. It's gonna do a lot of stuff, and then retrigger, of course, the enter the battlefield effect. So you need to have strong enter the battlefield effects. But imagine this with like the blue-green, I don't know, it's not the Mentor, the other card, the Pawn Prophet or whatever it's called. It's just 1 mana, draw 2 cards. That is pretty powerful.
Yeah, but that is also sort of a nice nice case scenario, right? I mean, there will
But
also
even
be times when this just absolutely does nothing.
if you have nothing to bounce with it, it does nothing. But I think that if you're playing this, obviously, if you're playing this outside of something with like with a lot of targets to bounce, I wouldn't suggest you put it in there. Even then, it's like the floor is 1 mana cycle. That's not too bad. There's a lot of uses in all of the blue stuff for that. I really think I like this one.
So a bird, frog, otter, or rat. What are we talking here? Is it 50% of the blue creatures, or?
I think it's going to be more a lot of the time, depending on how you build your deck, of course. Because rats, if you're blue-black, both blue and black have rats. If you're blue-red, both blue and red have otters, and so on and so forth, right? So it's going to be like most of your decks are going to be semi-tribal in this format, and that should mean that like 70% of your creatures should fit one of these, or maybe more, depending on how you build. And almost all the frogs have entered the battlefield. Some of them even have when another target leaves or enters. So you might be able to trigger both the enter the battlefield effect and the leaves the battlefield effect with this. I think this can go up to, and now you're gonna hold your horses because I have this at a B. If you have
seriously,
yes, I do believe it's gonna be that strong in like a frog or a spell stack where you can actively use the draw a card and enter the battlefield effects. I just think it does so much for basically no investment.
but I think you underestimate the floor, though. It is
Cycle,
lower
it's just
than
one blue cycle.
no, but it's not. First of all, it requires you to actually have a creature.
Yeah,
And
that's
second of
true. It
all,
does have to target.
if you are 2 colors, not so sure. You could have creatures that are the wrong type at the wrong moment, right? It's just I don't like cards that don't do anything when you're behind.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be able to, if this is stuck in your hand and you're behind and they've been killing your creatures, even just playing out a creature and bouncing that to cycle this, I can see bumping it down maybe to a B minus, but I think this is gonna be actively strong, and I'm gonna look to pick up these and play them in my frog decks and maybe my other decks too. I don't think I care too much about it in rats or birds, I must admit, but hey, even those have some enter the battlefield effects like the birds and stuff, and rats want to get stuff in the bin, right? So it's good for all the archetypes. I think we're
Perhaps.
gonna have to
Well,
agree to disagree.
definitely. This one may be the one that we disagreed on the most so far.
That's awesome. We actually got that. Bellowing Crier is the next one. So 1 and a blue for a creature, Frog Advisor. It's a 2/1, and when Bellowing Crier enters, draw a card, then discard a card.
Well, it's not exciting. It's a frog that helps a little bit. A 2/1 that lets you. What's the word for it? Not rummaging. That's the red one, right?
Yeah, this is looting.
Looting, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's playable. I think it's a fine replacement 2-drop if you don't have anything better to do. I have it between a C minus and a C.
Yeah, same. I think this can go up to C in like the threshold deck. I don't think I'm playing this in frogs, to be honest, unless I have something that really cares about having frogs specifically. But drawing a card and discarding a card on your 2-drop to get something into the bin for the threshold deck seems like something that could be okay. But it's not something I'm going to be picking anywhere early. C minus to C, I agree. Dazzling Denial is the next one. 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. If you control a bird, counter that spell unless its controller pays 4 instead. So counter spell variant.
Yeah, it's sort of a mana leak variant, really, right?
Yeah, that's true.
What it can be, sometimes it makes it a bit easier for your opponent, and sometimes it makes it a bit harder, right? I've always been a little skeptical on going too heavily in on the counter spells in draft. Also because especially counters that are not just hard counters. Something like this is just better in constructed, I think, than it is in limited. In limited, you will find yourselves in situations where the board stalls and you have 8 mana and your opponent have 9 mana, and then you risk sitting or top decking a card like this and just having no targets for it.
Yeah.
So again, that situation, you need to hold up that against the best case scenario where you get to counter something that they would have played on curve. And I mean, in that case, I would just rather have a removal spell.
Yeah, but
So
removal spells are hard to come by, though.
they are. So I'm not saying this is unplayable or anything. It's just, again, I'm sort of in D plus C minus territory.
I have this at C minus outside of birds, but in birds, I think it's going to be better than that.
I could see that. I could see
like
that.
2 mana, pay 2 extra is a decent early play in a controlling deck. So play this instead of a 2-drop in the blue-black if you're going controlling. But other than that, could be decent C minus ish. But in a birds deck, I think like paying 4 a lot of the time is gonna make this closer to a counter spell than to just the usual thing. That's still the late game effect, I should say, but I think this could go up to like a CC plus in a birds deck if you're playing controlling.
A C at least. Yeah. I could see a C at least, but yeah.
Gossip's Talent is our next one, and we have one of these enchantment class. So it's 1 on the blue, and whenever a creature you control enters, surveil 1. That's level 1. Then you can pay 1 on the blue to level it up to level 2. And whenever you attack, target attacking creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. Then you can pay 3 on a blue to level it up to level 3. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may exile it, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control.
Oh, I kind of like this one. It's a weird card, but it does a lot of stuff, and I actually like most of its abilities, even if they don't really seem to be going in the same same deck almost. I mean, the first two, the first one is obviously very good with Threshold. The second one is just good. I mean, getting to make one of your 3 or less guys unblockable is just actively good. This is something that's gonna mean that as long as you have a steady supply of mediocre dudes, then you will be able to threaten your opponent all the time. So I really like that, especially coupled with the Surveil 1 that sort of gives you an edge from time to time. And then the third ability I'm a little bit less sure on. I would need to see how good decks that really care about flickering, like the Frogs deck, as you say, how good it ends up being. But I mean, coupled with the other 2 abilities, which I like a lot already, it's obviously nice to have the option to go the flicker route as well. It's just flexibility. More flexibility is always great.
So
obviously.
how high / not high are you on this then?
I'm at a sort of a B or a B minus.
Okay. I'm for once I'm less optimistic than you then. I don't like paying 2 to get Surveil maybe 2 times in the next couple of times. Like, it's okay-ish. The next 2 to be able to attack with a creature of 3 or less. Power 3 or less, I mean. I think I might be playing this in a really defensive shell, really controlling shell to have some way to break through the board stall on the other side, but I would need a lot of defensive creatures to stall the board out. And sure, if I have a good target to bounce the last one, but like that's an 8 mana investment over the course of the game, so we really have to be able to go long. I have this at a C if you can. You can maybe get it up to C plus if you're really building around it, but I don't think that's the best way to success. But definitely, I would only be playing this in a really defensive deck, honestly.
It also has a lot to do with the speed of the format in general.
I think the format is going to be pretty fast. Yeah. in general.
I could see that hurting the card for sure. I do have a soft spot for incremental value, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And this one delivers on that, right? So this is gonna be one of those investments where it's gonna keep paying off for the entire game. But I could see this if the format is very fast, I would tend to agree with your grading. If if it ends up being a little bit more mid-rangey in tempo, then I would stand by my rating.
Yeah.
But we will have to wait and see.
No, that's fair. Long Rivers Pull. This is the next one. It's blue as casting cost. It's instant. Gift a card, and then you can counter target creature spell. If the gift was promised, instead counter target spell. So
Yeah, I know
yet
it's
another
too
counter
awkward.
spell. Too awkward.
Yeah, it's too awkward in the mana cost. I mean, if I have to pay 2 blue, then at least I want it to be unconditional, without having to give a card for it. I realize that we don't get that deal anymore
That's the
with
original counter
counterspell.
spell, right? Isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and that would be a great card. But I mean, to get a card is too much.
Yeah.
It's and to counter a creature spell, then I honestly I would just rather have an unsummon. I would rather just have the flexibility of paying one and a blue on the original. Not the, isn't it, what's it called? Not the unsummon. The counter target creature spell.
Yeah.
The
Essence
original one.
Scatter or something.
Essence Scatters.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. I would actually rather have an Essence Scatter here to get the job done cleanly and not be in a situation where you can't cast it.
Yeah.
It's a horrible situation to be when you counterspell when you can't cast it,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. Sure. Holding up 2 blue can also be awkward just by itself, right?
Yeah.
So, as a rating, where you're at?
Yeah.
Sounds like a D range.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, D plus.
I have it at D and then D plus if you're blue enough. I do like the fact that it can go and counter a real spell later in the game and give them another card. There are some really like enchantments and stuff you really want to counter, so that's awesome. But I'm not happy to
But
put this in there.
more often than not, the most important thing to counter would be
a
big
creature.
bomby creature.
Yeah, exactly. Otterball Antics is the next one. 1 and a blue for a sorcery. Create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with Provis. If this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And then the card has flashback for 3 and a blue. So you can cast it once again from your graveyard.
It's kind of a cute card. It does a lot for the red-blue deck. It's a spell for the red-blue deck.
Mm-hmm.
It creates over the course of the game. It's actually 2 spells.
Yeah, it's
and
2 spells.
Over the course of the game, it creates 2 otters that have prowess. So I actually kind of like cards like this that are both sort of helping you set up the deck, but it also has a bit of a reward in it too, so you don't end up. It's cards like this that protects you from going overboard with either enablers or payouts, right?
Yeah, because it falls in both categories.
Exactly. So in that sense, this is sort of a bread and butter card that I wouldn't mind having. So that being said, it's small effects. So it's I'm at a C plus.
Yeah. And if it's not in the spell stack specifically, you're not playing this, or
And then perhaps it falls down to it's still 2 creatures, and prowess is still playable. Is still a relevant ability outside of the spell stack. So then it would probably fall to a C or C minus.
Yeah, I have it at C minus outside. I might be playing it in a blue-black, just hoping to be able to surveil it away or mill it or whatever. And other than that, I think it might be close to a B minus in the actual spell stat. But C plus, I'm gonna be okay with that as well. Bloomburrow Escort is the next one. It's 1 and a blue for a creature, Bird Scout. It's a 2/1 flash flyer. And when Bloomburrow Escort enters, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn.
Now, this is a nifty little bird. I don't think there is a ceiling as to how many of this card I would play in a draft. This is just a wonderful little creature, right? It's gonna feel so bad for the opponent to flash this in response to removal spell.
Yeah.
Because a 2/1 flyer for 2 is fine. It carries I would actually say it's right there where I would actually play it on its own.
Yeah, just
But
a 2/1 for 2 seems good. Yeah, flyer.
yeah, flyer. And then stick an ability like that on it with flash. This is it's not a guaranteed 2-for-1, but if you're patient, it's pretty close to it. So I have this at a B, it could even be a B plus,
Okay.
just because of how darn annoying it's gonna be.
I think in like the higher brackets, people are gonna learn to play around this pretty fast. Um, so
What are you
maybe,
gonna do? Just don't use removal?
mm, yeah, I just think it's gonna be not as great. And then we have the trouble that I've been talking about. There's a bunch of reach creatures. So
Mhm.
the 2/1 flyer here, I have it a little lower than I usually would. I think this is at the C plus to B minus level. I do think that I'm gonna be playing this in most decks. So I'd bump it up to B minus if either you're playing very aggressive or you have a lot of
Mhm.
instants in your deck, so it's easier for you to hold up stuff
Mhm.
as per usual. With instants, play good with other instants, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because you are gonna have to often just flash it in there to not waste your mana if you're not playing enough instants with it,
Mm.
even if they
Yeah, yeah,
don't go
definitely,
for the
definitely.
removal spell.
But that's the thing. I mean, a 2-1 flyer for 2 is fine.
Yeah, that's not a
So,
bad fail case for not hitting their removal spell with this. Definitely, I just
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's
But
gonna be how it plays out often. That you hold up for a removal spell, they don't do it, and you
mm,
have to flash it in, and then they do the removal spell on your turn instead if they've picked something instant. They can't always do that, so it is gonna hit something obviously,
mm.
and I think it's gonna be better in best of one.
Yeah, but even the threat of a blue player might having this is going to actually enable you to bluff some things.
Yeah,
So
it's a fun card, and it's one that people need to respect for sure.
sure.
So I'd say C plus to maybe B minus, and you were a lot higher, a bit
I
higher at
was
least,
I
not a
was a lot
lot.
higher,
Yeah,
but
Runaway
I
to.
think
Oh, sorry.
I think in many of the blue cards, it's blue cards like this that you risk initially giving too low a grade because they just turn out to be so darn annoying in practice, right?
Yeah, yeah,
For the opponent. That I think this is one of those cards that will turn out to be just deceptively good.
yeah.
But we'll see.
Well, I could see it playing out better than I think it will. Um, it's an option, definitely. The next one, Runaway Together, 1 and a blue for an instant. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hand. And obviously, for what we are doing, this is going to be your own and the opponent's, but it's interesting to note that this doesn't actually say your own. It has to be one of them.
Mhm.
So if you're playing multiplayer, it does other stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not too keen on this one. I gotta say. Um you don't have the option of only choosing one, so you have to set up a situation where you have a creature that you'd like to pick up again, and I can see the payout, of course, being that you can get to play a creature with that instant battlefield effect again, or you can save a guy from removal. But still, it just feels too clunky for me. So I'm actually at a D plus. I think I'd
Um,
rather not play this card.
yeah, and compared to Into the Floodmore, I have this a little higher than that. Um,
Mhm.
I have this at yeah. I don't think I'm gonna be playing this outside of rocks. I must admit. So there we are, all the way down to like a D or something to that effect, maybe
Mhm.
D plus. But in the Frogs deck, if I have enough targets that I okay bouncing, I think I'm gonna be bumping this up to a C.
Mhm.
So slightly higher in the Frogs deck, slightly lower
Mhm.
outside maybe.
Mhm.
Mm,
But
ne-
the problem just being that you have to actually cast the damn frog again, right?
yeah, there are a
So,
couple of 1 and 2 mana Frogs that I would not mind having to recast. There's one that gives you like a life and a counter, and there's of course upon profits that gives you a card. But yeah, it's not gonna be like the best when you have to recast them. I much prefer the flicker effects.
yeah, yeah.
But it does,
But
as you mentioned, it does have the option to save your creature as well.
mm.
Do. Shoreline Looter.
Yes.
It's 1 on the blue. Casting cost, creature, rat rogue. It's a 1/1, and Shoreline Looter cannot be blocked. Then it has the Threshold ability that reads just such. Whenever Shoreline Looter deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card unless 7 or more cards are in your graveyard. So basically, if you have Threshold, it's just draw a card. If you don't, it's loot.
Mm-hmm. I like this one. This one is great. It's looting is not that bad, and looting will eventually mean that it'll trigger itself, right? So it will turn it into a draw card each turn. Deal 1 damage, draw a card. That's a great card for 2 mana. I'm sort of in. I think this could be a B.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be really good, actually. You do need to have something to defend yourself while this is pegging away at them, but it gets you smooth out your draw a lot. Like, looting is a strong ability, and as soon as you hit Threshold, this is just going to be insane. I do think I might be playing this in birds as well, maybe, to have it pick up counters from all the birds entering. It seems like a good way to get an evasive ground beater that also does other stuff, right, with the looting. But other than that,
although it will mean that I think you made a good point about you need to be able to afford having a creature that only attacks all the time, right? So
definitely.
if you do, it needs to attack every turn. So putting counters on it, it's gonna be fine. It'll up your damage output, obviously, but it also means that those counters aren't gonna play defense.
Yeah, but as we talked about with the birds on some of the white ones, you don't really usually want to buff up your defense. Those just need to stand there and like be there. You kind of want to buff up your offense. So if you imagine playing this instead of one of your birds, it's obviously not going to be as synergistic, but it does have the loot effect on top of it.
I can see that. So this is sort of a semi-bird where you get around the clause that you can't buff the bird. I could see that. Sure.
Yeah. So for me, it could go all the way up to a B+, maybe, if you're perfectly set up for this in a Threshold deck that can use this effect for something. But yeah, in general.
But you probably can't play too many of these, right? I mean, I would play the first 2 or 3, but there is an upper limit because you can't have all your team be 1/1s that give you nifty little extra abilities.
No, that would be an issue. Although it would be fun. And also it dies to like anything. A playful shove kills this one, and that's actually the name of one of the cards. Yeah. So we have the next card is Thought Shocker. 1 and a blue for a creature rat rogue. It's a 1/3, and it has Threshold ability where you need to pay 1 and a blue. You can put a +1/+1 counter on Thought Shocker. Oh, actually, it says put a +1/+1 counter on Thought Shocker and draw a card. Activate only if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, and only once. The last thing I think is weird, and only once.
Yeah, I sort of really, when I read this card, I thought, ooh, this looks good. 2 mana to just draw draw a card and get a counter, and just keep doing it, but only once, unfortunately. Obviously, this isn't good enough if you can't hit Threshold. The question then becomes, as with all cards that are not good enough on their own, is it good enough, this ability, when you can only use it once? A 2/4 for 4 that draws a card, that would be definitely good enough for me. But this being only active some of the time, I don't know. I'm not that high on it. I think there are better Threshold cards out there. I'm probably at a C-.
Yeah, I'm only playing this in Threshold, first of all. I have it at the D outside. And then I think it could be a C in the Threshold deck. If you're good enough at getting Threshold. The 2/4 that it does come down on turn 2, so it can sort of block or eat a combat trigger early if that's what it's gonna be the deal with it. So might bump it up a little bit for that. I'm just really weirded out by the and only once on a Magic card. This feels like something they wouldn't have done before Arena.
Yeah.
And why doesn't it just have like adapt Threshold or something to that effect? Because it seems like it's probably because they don't want to put adapt in the
keyword.
Yeah, that's it. But it's just weird. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fort Shocker, C- to C in the Threshold deck. Finch Formation is the next one. 2 and a blue, creature Bird Scout. It's a 2/2 flyer, and when this creature enters, target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. And then it has Offspring for 3. Yeah?
Yeah, it's just a bit expensive, right? I mean, at least the Offspring ability, right? Its normal cost is sort of meh. It's okay, but in this day and age, a 2/2 flyer for 2 is sort of only borderline good enough. And then, of course, you have that being able to make one of the other guys get flying. That's nice. You can get in a little bit of extra damage, but it's not going to be that impactful. When you cast it with Offspring, you get to do it with 2 creatures all at once. That can be a bit more impactful, but 6 mana is a lot for a 1/1 and a 2/2 flyer. I have this at a C.
Yeah. In specifically the Birds deck, or maybe the Frog deck, I could see this going up to a C. I think the play pattern with this one is going to be get to 6 mana, bounce 2 of your big ground dudes and attack with the rest of your flyers you have out already to maybe get in like the last big hit. But these 2 birds don't have haste. It's not really a good finisher like that. It does put in some more pressure in the air afterwards. 3 points of power in the air is not horrible.
Alternatively, it lets you survive the counter alpha, right? Because you have 2 bodies you can throw in front of counter.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad to play pretend ground defense while your ground defense was out playing pretend birds. It's a little weird. I do think it's gonna be okay in the birds deck.
Yeah.
And maybe the frogs deck too. And the reason I say frogs is that I think those can become it's green, and green has some big, as you've been talking about before, right? Green has some big stuff, and I think frogs are more likely to play those than a lot of the other decks, just the big tramplers and such.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it for Finch Formation. Long River Lurker, 2 and a blue. Creature, Frog Scout. It has Ward 1. Oh, sorry, it's a 2/3. It has Ward 1. Other frogs you control have Ward 1 as well. When Long River Lurker enters, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn, and whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, you may exile it. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I particularly like the abilities of this card, but it just has so many different abilities that it all adds up, considering that it's a 3-drop and it's a 2/3 already. So I think actually this one is going to be serviceable. The last ability, either it's going to let you go in and deal a little bit of damage, or you can use it to do some combo-ish stuff where you can flicker your guy and get another battle into the battlefield effect, which is of course what you really want, right? But I kind of like that you even get something out of the ability if you can't set it up, and the ward is going to be a bit annoying, especially the ward for the other frogs is going to be a bit annoying. So all that taken together, and I end up on a C+ basically.
Yeah, once again, I'm a little higher for the frogs deck, so maybe it's just because I really like the frogs deck. That seems to be like a theme that's going on. I really like the flicker bounce stuff going on, so I think this could be a B- in that deck.
Just remember, you have to win the game at some point. You can't just dirtle
Yeah,
around.
but I see my frogs as being like decently big. This doesn't have the clause of only 3 power less. So if you can flicker this one, then imagine one of your frogs you put in gives you the ability to flicker this guy. This guy flickers, and then it makes something else unblockable. Then that something else hits and can flicker and trigger its effect again, and so
yes, it can get
seems
out
like
of
a
hand.
cute thing going on. And I do enjoy the ward effect on my other frogs, I think. But B- in that deck, C outside of it. Mind Whisker as the next one. 2 and a blue for a creature rat wizard. It's a 3/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. And then it has Threshold. As long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, creatures your opponent controlled gets -1/-0.
Now, all of your threshold decks are gonna want this.
Yeah.
This is a really strong card. I mean, getting to Surveil every turn on a 3/2 for 3 is already good, but giving the entire team, opposing team -1, -0 is just very annoying for the opponent. And it can even activate itself and stuff like that. So this is a great card. I have it around a B.
Yeah, in the Threshold deck, right?
Around a B in the threshold deck, but actually a B- outside of it.
Okay, at C+ outside of it, but I agree with the rest of what you're saying. The -1, -0 ability is just so oppressive if you're trying to play defense at all, or if you're trying to race, or if you're trying to do basically anything. So
imagine running this out against the poor rabbit deck, right?
yeah, yeah. The only thing I think I would be a little afraid of on this one is that it dies pretty easily, and
Sure.
that could mess a lot with
Instant
your combat
speed
mass.
will you shouldn't sort of assume that it's going to necessarily live through the next turn.
Yeah, that's sort of my point.
It can easily die mid combat for sure.
But as long as you have that in mind, this card is going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Free Surveillon, go on. That's awesome. Nightwall Hermit is the next one. Or Wall? I don't know. Nightwall Hermit, I'm gonna go with that. 2 and a blue for a creature, Rad Rogue. It's a 1/4. It has Vigilance, and Threshold is 7 or more, blah blah blah. Nightwall Hermit gets +1/+0 and cannot be blocked.
I think this is basically a bread and butter card of the threshold archetype. I mean, it's good enough. I mean, a 1/4 vigilance for 3 is not good enough to be played, but it's good enough that it doesn't feel like you didn't play a card. And then as soon as you have threshold down, you have this amazing little beater that plays both sides of the field. He gets in for 2, and he's still a respectable blocker. What's not to like? I think this is going to be a very serviceable 3-drop, and for that reason, I have it around a C+.
Slightly lower, at a C in the Threshold deck for this one. I'm not playing it outside of Threshold decks, so
No,
this is a
not.
red only. But yeah, serviceable card, C drop, I'd say. C drop. That's a term now, apparently. Pearl of Wisdom is our next card. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control an otter, and it allows you to draw 2 cards.
Yeah. I mean,
boom, boom.
A better divination. It's going to be pretty good in the red blue otters spell matters deck. Outside of it, less so, but still serviceable. I think I have it as a C- outside the otters deck, but it could be a C+ in the otters spell matter deck.
Yeah, slightly lower on it outside. I don't think divination really cuts it anymore for just a random one, but even like 1 otter, and I'm gonna be playing this, and imagine like, I know we were kind of low on the red-blue otter mentor, the gold card, but imagine just having that 1 out, and this is gonna be a 1 mana, draw 2 cards. Or more realistically, we could have played like 2 of the flash card from before, what's it called? Otterball Antics. Have 2 otters from that, draw 2 cards. So this is just blue mana, draw 2 cards a lot of the time in the other deck. So C+, yeah, I'm good with that in that deck. Sugarcoat is the next one, and it's so cute. 2 and a blue for an enchantment aura. It has flash, and it can enchant creature or food. The food thing is just for it to actually work. What it does is, enchanted permanent is a colorless food artifact with 2 tap, sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. And then it loses all other card types and abilities, so it just becomes a food.
I didn't actually realize that. You're of course right. They have to write food, otherwise it would die instantly, right?
Yeah, what would happen is that it would be turned into a food, and then this would fall off, and it would be turned back into a creature.
Yeah, so that would be silly. No, I like this one. This is as close as this is pretty close for blue to a really high quality removal spell. I think I have this at B minus.
Yeah, slightly lower, but that's just because I really don't like giving them stuff. It's just a food, but this is gonna be a lot worse against like the scroll deck or any green deck that wants to forage, or any black deck that wants to forage. But hey, it's still unconditional removal, right?
And it's instant speed, no less.
Instant speed, unconditional removal for 3 in blue as well. So yeah, I have it at C+. I do see this playing out better against someone who doesn't.
Remember, you can use this in combat too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can use it. Yeah. So I mean,
This is just instant speed kill something. I do agree with that. For 3 mana. I'm just not a fan of giving them. I think a lot of the opposing things might have something to do with food. Yeah, maybe I should bump this up to B minus, but like compared to some of the black ones.
Yeah, but that's black, right? You sort of go into black in order to to get that removal suite open
That's
for
true.
you, right?
I was actually considering whether to take that into effect when rating, whether or not you say, okay, this is a really good removal spell, but it's in black, and black already has access to a lot of other better removal spells. Just if we take it at the card at face value, I think it's like a C plus, B minus. B minus is probably okay.
But very cute.
Very cute. Now you're a cookie. Live with it. Waterspout Warden. 2 and a blue. Also horrible if you think about it. Sorry, I'll stop. Waterspout Warden. 2 and a blue for a creature frog soldier. It's a 3/2, and whenever Waterspout Warden attacks, if another creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, Waterspout Warden gets flying until end of turn. This is yet another one of the ground beaters that can't get flying.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. It's sort of, it's gonna have flying half the time on offense. But a 3/2 for 3 is a little small for the cost. So I think this is going to be around it's fairly replaceable. Okay, it is a frog, which may matter for some of your things. I have it between a C minus and a C.
Yeah, I don't disagree that much. I think this is one of the ones that, in frogs, there's a good chance that you're going to be having a creature enter the battlefield almost every turn. So I think it's more, as you say, a little more than 50% of the time in that deck. And then I have this as tagged as a secret bird card as well, because it's a ground beater that you can put counters onto, and then when it attacks, it's going to have flying. So
I can see that bumping up a little bit.
Yeah, but I still only have it at a C, so I don't disagree with you. In those decks, if you have stuff for it. Next up, Dire Downdraft for 3 and a blue. It's an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets an attacking or tapped creature. Target creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library.
Yeah, this is a fine card. I just don't like giving my opponents options. But nevertheless, most of the time you will use it on something that they'll want to put on the top anyway. So I had this at C plus, I think, for being a sort of fairly decent semi-removal spell.
Yeah. And how often do you intend to play this primarily in defensive decks, or do you want to be bouncing stuff to get in your stuff?
It can go in both decks, I think.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it can go in both decks because normally I would sort of be inclined. The tempo boost you get from this means that you may actually prefer to play it on offense, but then it gets cheaper if you do it on defense. So actually, it's a quite nifty design to sort of maybe even balance it out there.
Mm-hmm. And it's card parity, that's decent, but I'm never really a huge fan of temporary solutions, and this feels like the definition of temporary solutions. At least the last couple of ones we saw like this, it put it like 1 card below the top, so the second card from the top or something like that. I was a lot more into those, buying me 2 turns. This only buys me 2 turns if it's an attacker, maybe, but that's it. I had it as C. I have it as C. Yeah. But it's fine. I'm gonna be playing it in some of my decks.
Mhm.
You need some interaction, right?
Sure.
The next one, Light Shell Duo, 3 and a blue for a creature rat otter. It's a 3/4 and it has prowess. And then when Light Shell Duo enters, surveil 2.
This is a quite decent creature, I think. I mean, it is quite beefy. I think 3/4 powers for 4 is already sort of in the somewhat playable area. So add to it that it gets surveil too. I think you have an actively good card. So I could see this being at least a C plus.
Okay. Just not that much of a fan of it. I don't think I think I might be dogging it for being a 4-drop as well. Once again,
Sure.
maybe a bit too much. I think I have it written down as a C minus here, but it should probably be bumped to C because I do see the surveil 2 upon entering, and it's gonna be a 4/5 a lot of the turn and turns in it, at least in the blue deck, maybe even better. It just lacks any other like effect. It's just stats, right?
But stats are great.
Yeah, but no trample, no evasion, no vigilance, even anything like that. It is kind of big. That is true.
Sometimes you need a beater.
Yeah.
And it could be, and also actually I think the red blue deck really needs something that is of decent size.
Yeah, that could be true. I think I can go and correct myself to C here. That might be okay. And but probably mostly in the rat and otter deck specifically.
Mm.
I think that is going to be my verdict. The next one, Spellgaia. 2 and blue for an instant. Choose one, counter target spell, or surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. So a counter spell with a backup option.
I would say it's the backup option is the counterspell.
Okay.
I would say it's a bad deal to pay 4 mana to surveil 2 and then draw 2 cards, but at least it's instant speed. So I could see this play with, if you want to go all controlling with blue, if you're holding up something else, then this is nice in case it doesn't work out, right? I could see if you must play the other counterspells, I could see this going nicely with it. So you don't end up missing your turn if things don't work out.
But the entire point of this is that you don't have to have the other counterspell, right? You can just have this one card. You don't have to have 2 card combos. This does
But I don't
both.
want to play 4 mana for a counterspell.
Isn't the reason the normal reason you don't want to play 4 mana for a counterspell is that you have to hold up 4 mana and don't need to have a fallback option, and this sort of like covers that hole. I'm fine playing 4 mana. I'm fine paying 4 mana to counter my opponent's whatever 5, 4, 6 drop.
Sure, if you gotta do what you gotta do. If it's their bomb, then of course you do it. But I can also see actually many situations where you sort of hold up this one, hoping to being prepared to counter the bomb, and then they're gonna play a 3/4 or something like that, and you're gonna look at that 3/4 and say, do I actually want to counter that, or do I just want 2 cards?
Yeah, then that's the lovely part about this having both options in one card, right?
Sure. Sure.
I might sound like I'm a lot high on this. I'm not, but I do think it's decent. What do you have it at?
Playable C minus.
Yeah, I have it as C if you have enough instance and threshold matters to you. But other than that, just C minus as well. So I think we agree on that part. I just kind of like the design of it. It like does what counterspells usually. It covers the hold of usual counterspells. Splash.
Even more than what you said before with one of the other instances. This one really plays well with other instances, right?
Yeah.
And other flashcards.
Yeah, because it just gives you like many modes, and you can choose whichever one is going to be the best of you for this given turn.
Sure.
Splash Slasher, 3 and a blue for a creature frog wizard. It's a 3/3, and when this creature enters, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it, and then it has offspring for 1 and a blue. So for 4 blue, you can get double stun counter and some creatures.
It's cute, but still, it's not the most impactful 6-drop I ever saw. It's nice that you get to. It's not horrible as a 4-drop either, in that you can. A 3/3 is a relevant creature, and definitely if you're behind, I could see this being played as a 4-drop also, just to buy you some time because the stun counter really makes it a lot better on defense also. But that said, I mean, it's not a card I'm going to be excited to play. It just feels a bit clunky, a bit too expensive, so I'm going to give it a C.
Okay. I think I have this as one of the best blue cards.
Really?
Yeah. I do believe that for the Ferox deck, once again, that just as a double stun counter is a lot of tempo. And if you're going into this trying to drag out the game a little bit, trying to get all of your combo stuff to work, locking down your opponents is just going to be sweet. Bouncing this even puts the stun counter back. And of course, there's the option that if you play it at 6 mana with the Offspring, you can put 2 stun counters on that big thing and lock it down for 2 turns instead of locking down 2 different creatures. I see a lot of options with it. So even outside of the Frogs deck, I think this is at least a C+, maybe even B- level territory, just because it has a lot of tempo built in. And in the Frogs deck, where you're going to be jumping all over the place with this, I do have this as a B+. And that might be insane when you're saying C, but I think I'm going to stick to that, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's because you want to do so. Again, we are in magical Christmas land territory with all these combos. You're sitting and playing on your own side of the board and forgetting the opponent is there too.
But the point of this card is that it doesn't forget that the opponent is there, right? It stuns them, locks them down, and gives me time to do all the weird nonsense.
Yeah, that's true. But still, it goes into a deck that really wants to sit on your own side of the board and just combo off with your cards interacting with each other, right?
Yeah, what's not to like?
Well, when it works, it's gonna feel like you have the most powerful deck in the world. But when it doesn't come together, your deck does nothing.
Yeah, that is the problem with a combo deck, and I do know that you have a propensity to really dislike combo decks.
Yeah, that's just a personal preference. But yeah, and that may color me somewhat, but still.
So I'm gonna be too high on this, and you're gonna be too low on this. Is that why we're at?
Probably. So it's probably a B-.
Yeah, something to that effect. I'm still gonna go B+ for the Frogs deck. This is gonna be awesome. Night Fisher, and now we're into some of the expensive cards. Blue have a few more of those than some of the earlier colors. We have for 3 and blue, a creature, Bird Knight. It's a 4/5 flyer, and whenever another non-token bird you control enters, create a 1/1 blue fish creature token.
That is a beautiful card. Beautiful picture, and this it hits like a truck. A 4/5 for 4/5 flyer for 5, and then it has an ability to repeatedly create you token creatures. This is my candidate for best uncommon in the set.
Yeah, like in the entire set, all colors and stuff.
All colors, the entire set.
Sweet.
I think this one. We are almost in. We are beginning to move into bomb territory here. This one can win you the game on its own. What's not to like? It hits like a truck, and it even creates some blockers for you while you're doing it. So, yeah.
This is also really gonna punch through a lot of the reach card I've been talking about earlier. It just doesn't care about like a 2/3 reach, right? Or something to that effect. I don't know if there's a 2/3 reach.
Yeah, some 4/4 reaches too, right? I mean, I think that extra point in toughness can also end up being really great.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I really have this card as being strong if you have birds to go with it specifically. It's a little expensive if you don't.
Really? Do you think it's expensive to pay 5 mana for a 4/5?
No, not like that. I just mean it's a 5-drop. And you need to. This is a good thing to do with your 5 mana. I do agree on that thing, but it's still just one creature that gets killed with no protection. So it's not strictly into bomb territory for me, is what I'm saying. If you have birds to go with it, I do see this being really strong because like jump blockers on the ground are awesome. As long as you can swing in the air for 4 every turn as well, that's pretty sick.
Yeah. And just imagine you can throw this down, and then you can throw some birds down that create a 1/1 fish, and then it creates a counter on it too, and stuff like that. It can do all kinds of stuff, and even when it doesn't, it's still a 4/5 flyer for 5.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh,
So the
so
floor, as you say, is very high.
it's really high. It's really high. Um, Fitting for a bird, right?
Yeah, I was gonna go that direction as well.
So actually, I'm going to go the unmentionable route here and say that this is the only card in the entire set around amongst the commons and uncommons that I have as an A minus.
Oh, awesome. So I'm
Yeah.
slightly lower than you, but I think this is a B to maybe B plus if you have the support for it. I do think it's probably like a, yeah, I was gonna say C plus actually outside of birds, but I think that's too low for 4/5 flyer with the extra ability. So maybe it's a B minus outside of a real dedicated bird thing, and then a B plus inside. I can see that. It does look sweet.
Definitely.
I do want to be playing it. So Mind Spiral is the next one. 4 and a blue for a sorcery. Gift a tapped fish. Target player draws 3 cards. If the gift was promised, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it.
Yeah, this is a fine card. I think it's 5 mana, draw 3. I think it in a not too aggressive deck, this is a nice card to have one of. And I actually also like the gift mode. I don't want to be using it very often. Maybe I want to be using it 20% of the time. But oh my god, those 20% of the time when I want to use it, it can be really important. It can be used game winningly to get in the last damage you need. It can, with the stun counter, it can be used to gain you the time you need to actually play those 3 cards. So yeah, no, I think it's an all-round good card. Although of course not being special or anything like that, but I have it as a C plus.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on this. Drawing 3 cards is sweet, and I do like the option to stun. I do also think that gifting the tap fish is often, once you get to 5 mana, a 1/1 on the other side is not going to be like the worst. But there are some go white decks as well where you don't want to do that. And I do think that doing nothing on your turn 5, you really have to have set up to be able to play this card. So I have it a little lower, like at a C minus to C level.
But you don't have to cast it on turn 5. This could be the last card you cast.
Yeah, and it
So
probably should be, of course.
cast it on turn 7 or turn 8, and then play a land and a 2-drop.
But then
Or
I
3.
need to have like a deck where I have already I need to have stabilized by the time I play this, right? And if this is in my hand instead of, let's say, the Night Fisher, obviously we both agree would have rather have the Night Fisher. But even instead of like a 3/3 whatever for 4, then it does slow them down a bit and allow you to draw into your protection. So I like that about it, and that's probably why I'm giving it a C. But I don't think it goes higher than that. That may be wrong. I do see you playing one of these in your control decks because you do want some draw, and drawing 3 is sweet.
Yeah, I very, very seldom would I play more than one of those.
Yeah. So next up, Skyskipper Duo, 4 and a blue for a creature, bird frog. It's a 3/3 flyer, and when Skyskipper Duo enters, exile up to 1 other target creature you control. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah, it's fairly obvious what it wants to do, right? It's you don't pay all that much to get that trigger, where you get to flicker something. It's fine. I like the fact that the floor is a 3/3 flyer for 5, which I would not play in this day and age on its own, but I almost would, especially when it's a bird frog. So I could get behind playing this uh, for the times when you are gonna be happy with the trigger too. So I'm probably gonna be giving this a C, and you're probably higher because you
No,
want this ability.
no, I'm actually not. I have this at C in the bird/frog deck if you have stuff to do with the bounce thing. I think it's a little too expensive. But and then C minus outside of that because it's, as you say, the floor is not that low.
Mm-hmm.
But do have something to bounce if you put this in your deck, right? Please. Yeah. I think I just agree. Calamitous Tide is our next card. 4 and blue. It's a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card.
This is a funny card. I mean, I think this is okay. One of the problems with having your big card bounce 2 of the other guys' team is that it's card disadvantage, and this sort of solves that. It's almost draw 2 also because once you're at 6 mana, you don't mind that much discarding a land. So it gives you a tempo advantage, and then you get your card back plus a little extra. So this is a perfectly fine curb topper, I think, without being anything special. So I have it at C plus.
Yeah, that is C. But I agree with everything you said. I just think that that probably lands at a C for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's sweet that it covers its own drawback once again, like the counterspell before, right?
Sure.
And then it's a sorcery, which of course, but
Oh yeah, had it been an instant, it would have been crazy.
yeah, would have been a lot better. As a lot of stuff. Then we are into the last 2 cards of blue. Daring Wave Rider, 4 blue for a creature, Otter Wizard. When Daring Wave Rider enters, you may cast a target instant or sorcery card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. And then it's a 4/4 if I didn't mention.
Oh, this is one of those cards that's very obviously it depends on what other cards you have. Ironically, even though it's an otter, this would be really good in a black blue deck
Yeah,
because then this is very very close to being just a 4/4 that kills a guy.
yeah.
But even in the blue red with a little bit of red damage removal, it comes close to being that as well. And a 4/4 is a great body, and this is one of those cards that can be really oppressive if you get to flicker it, especially if you have a ready supply of spells it can target. But it doesn't need that to be good. So for that reason, I have it between B minus and a B.
Yeah, just have this as a B. And I think that's is a little interesting, just having played a lot of MH3 recently, where there's the red version of this, basically. But it's just deal 4 instead of resurrect a mana value 4 or less instant sorcery, whatever card. So it's a slightly more narrow, but it also doesn't have to have a combo piece to go off with. And I didn't like that card too much, I must admit.
Really? Okay.
But that set was also a lot more powerful in general than Bloomburrow looks to be. And I do have this as a B. I think this is going to be a really, really strong card most of the time. Flickering, awesome. A lot of you can do that in any blue. Doesn't have to be frogs. As you said, blue-black with kill spells. And then there's probably some sweet other like draw effects or something. Just this could be a 4-mana draw 2 easily if you played the what's it called, Pearl of Wisdom earlier, the draw 2 cards. 4/4 that draws you 2 cards for 6 mana. Yes, please sign me up. Yeah. So I think this is going to be really strong, especially if you can have enough so that you can choose different modes for it when you play it.
Sure.
Last card, Edimerc Crab, 5 blue. It's a creature elemental crab. It's a 5/5. It has flash, and this spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Edimerc Crab enters tapped if it's not your turn. And when Edimerc Crab enters, tap up to 2 target creatures.
This is this is a bit of a difficult card to grade because how much is it gonna cost most of the time? What's the discount gonna be? It obviously depends on the deck, but are you gonna be able to cast this on turn 5?
Yeah, are you
No,
happy? What are you
probably
happy to pay for this?
not. I'm happy to pay 5. I'm probably okay with playing 6. With paying 6
Hmm?
and 7. At least it does something interesting, right? It can save you a turn, and then it's unfortunately it can't ambush anything, but you can cast it before your opponent's attack phase and sort of buy you a turn where they can't attack you with anything that matters, right? And then when it's your turn again, then you have an extra 5/5 to add to your board. So it's a decent card without being anything special. I have it at C+.
Yeah, I do believe in like dedicated spell stacks this could go up to B-. I think you can get it down to casting cost 4, not on turn 4, obviously, but being able to double spell with this as a cantrip at like turn 5 or
Sure, that's
6 or
pretty
whatever.
strong.
And then I do like the play pattern, as you say, of flashing it in during their turn. And then even if you're playing like on the offense, this is pretty impressive. Flash it in at the end of their turn, tap down 2 of their best blockers, and then you can swing on the next turn with like a very beefy creature. I think this is big enough to play a role. And in maybe even in a threshold deck, it doesn't have to, as long as you have enough spells for it to trigger.
You don't need that much of a discount. I mean, if you
I'm happy
if you
playing this for 5. I'm very happy playing this for
yeah
5. I'm happy playing this still for 6, I think. Decently,
yeah
at least. I guess you
excellent.
could also, if you draw this top deck, just tap down 2 of them and swing with the rest of what you have out. But that's gonna be it for the blue.
Yep.
What do you think of blue?
I'm not that impressed. I think it's probably gonna end up being better than I think it is. I think there are some. I really like the little bird, and I like the night fisher. But all in all, it's blue. I could see blue as being a strong support color.
As usual,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Uh, but I would need to pair it with something with some decent, uh, decent creatures. Green, white, something like that.
Yeah.
But
I
but
do.
but, but although I will say that I could see the threshold deck being a thing.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
you've said that earlier, that that's one of the ones you're actually actively wanting to, like, looking out for, hoping it's gonna be really good, right?
yeah.
I have my own little frogs. I hope it's gonna be strong, as we've talked about a bit.
Yeah.
I also heard people hating on the blue-black deck, and I like feel like I want to defend that because there's a lot of surveil that should be
Yeah.
able to make it function. I
hmm
don't know. I do agree. I think blue is probably gonna be one of the weaker colors.
hmm
Um,
Yeah, and actually, black may even be that too, but except for the removal spells. But I just think that the combination of the two
could be
may
sweet,
actually
yeah.
work because the cards are there to enable threshold, I think. And the threshold cards are generally kind of decent even without threshold, and then once threshold is activated, they become actively good, and that's sort of the place that I would like to be when constructing those kinds of decks.
I've done a couple of mock drafts by now, and for me, I did land into a blue-black like more often. I've not done enough to make it an actual reliable sample, of course. But I did land into blue-black twice already, and the decks looked decent once they were put together. There's a lot of good removal in black, like a lot of good removal in black. We'll get
hmm
into that next, so let's save that for that. I think we're gonna
hmm
end off here with that. So thank you for joining. If you have been, I've been Chandran. You've most definitely been awesome. Don't forget to do the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and we'll see you back here for the next color, which is going to be black. Bye bye.